All right, so I think this is working. Anyway, all right, buddy, this is Dark Witty. I haven't posted videos in a long time, and I kind of wanted to get back into it. And this is kind of just how I've decided to try to get back into that a little bit. Um, so, I have been playing Monster Hunter Wilds. I've played through all of low rank by now. I've reached high rank, and this is just a video that came up on my feed because I've been watching some videos about Monster Hunter Wilds. I've been watching different people play a little bit. I've been watching like tips and tricks, stuff like that. I've learned a few things. My background with Monster Hunter is not very. It's not a very big background with Monster Hunter. I've only ever really played this game and then World and a little bit of Iceborne. I didn't actually play all the way through Iceborne. I just played some of it because I was never really all that good at Monster Hunter World, and actually had to have a friend help me to get better and to actually help me finish the main story or like the high rank version of Monster Hunter World, so that I could move on to Iceborne. And I did all that before before Wilds came out. I played a little bit of two of the Wilds betas that came out just a bit before. But this video came up on my feed on here about how this is apparently this game is destroying the franchise. And I haven't watched any of it yet, and I'm just gonna kind of put in my own 2 cents on things. My 2 cents may not be as good as some other Monster Hunter people who have played the game like since the beginning, or even some of my friends have played more of the game than me. Like some of them have been playing since Try. I'm sure there's people out there who have been playing since even before then. But I'm just going to go ahead and give this a go and see what I can do for my own opinion on these things with what's going on here. Just go ahead and get into it.
This is just going to be a completely raw and unfiltered rant because I need to get it off my chest because it's stuck with me ever since I played the beta and I'm absolutely sick of it. Okay, first off.
Okay, mine's raw too, so we're even there. I don't have a script prepared or anything, so this is just it's me and you, buddy.
The clutch claw. Capcom, why did you think that getting rid of the clutch claw was the best option that you could do? Are you just trying to be different just because of the sake of being different?
Yeah, so the clutch claw was a big thing in World, and I really liked it. It was a super easy thing to use to be able to like beat down enemies, and I used it a lot. I probably actually used it too much because I actually found that after I stopped using the clutch claw that I was having a tougher time using my weapon simply because I didn't really know how to use my weapon, because a majority of the time I was just clutch clawing, throwing monsters into walls and just beating them up while clutching on them, thinking that was going to be like the best way to do it. And while it did make some things easier, and I'm sure it has its uses, like it definitely helped to stun monsters and stuff, and I still used it even after like learning how to use my weapon. Like it didn't make the game better because it had the clutch claw. It was just a new mechanic that they had in the game. From what I understand, the clutch claw wasn't a thing before World. From what I've been told, that the clutch claw was new to World, and like that there's different mechanics in each game. Apparently Rise didn't have it. I never played Rise, but from what I've been told from my friends and from what I've heard on the internet and from other people playing, that Rise also didn't have the clutch claw. It had a completely different mechanic for that. And Wilds has its own mechanic for mounting monsters. So as well as other new mechanics that it added, that I at least I think power clashing is new. I'm pretty sure power clashing is new. I know the wound system is new with focus mode. So it's just different mechanics to achieve some of the same results. And I mean, the wounds mechanic I really like because there actually is some like like the current armor I'm using in the game actually has an ability where when I break a wound on an enemy monster, it actually heals me a little bit, so I don't have to worry about using potions and stuff as much because the wound system actually helps heal me.
Okay, learning about tenderizing monsters in Monster Hunter World was fun, and not only fun, it was rewarding. Okay.
Yeah, sure, it was rewarding. I can agree there that like it was a rewarding experience using it, especially if it's something that you're like. I'm not saying that this guy's not good at using his weapon, but like if you don't know how to use a weapon, it's a really simple mechanic to get down to be able, like, basically anybody can do it. You can just use this mechanic, and all of a sudden you're doing all of these amazing things on the Clutch Claw that you can't do normally with the weapons, barring some specific mechanics with some other weapons that can mount from the ground, things like the dual blades or the insect glaive. But like other than that,
you actually feel like a hunter. You know, it's almost like Attack on Titan. I feel like I'm Levi.
okay, feeling like Levi, like I think from what I've seen of the mechanic in Rise is that the mechanic in Rise would probably actually make you feel like Levi more than this. And I mean, if you really want to feel like Levi, like one of the best weapons you could possibly use in Wilds is the dual blades, because it has all that, it has those mechanics in it already too, to be able to like get on the monster and just go flying up and down the monster, dealing a bunch of tiny bits of damage. Like if you want to feel like Levi, there you go. You can still do it in Wilds. It's just a different mechanic of how to do it. It's not the same, but it's just a different mechanic. I don't see why this is a problem to lose the Clutch Claw.
Okay, that's fun. I feel like a hunter. And not only doing that, but slamming monsters, right? Getting stones or dragon pods or whatever it is and just shooting them into the wall. It's fun and rewarding, man.
Okay, so like the pods and stuff, that still happens. Like you can break wounds and it will, and depending on the type of monster or where the wound is or the type of wound or whatever it is, I don't know exactly what determines it, but monsters still drop those pods, like dragon pods and bombs and stuff like that. That stuff still drops off of monsters. I don't think it's quite as much as World did, because every monster had some kind of pod that they would drop in World, basically. But in Wilds, you still have that. It may be to a lesser degree, but that's still there. And I mean, like I said, now we have the power clashing mechanic that I am not very good at using and have only maybe accidentally done it because I don't know exactly how to do it. But it's there. There's other mechanics to use in the game to kind of come to almost the same result.
But no, it's rewarding. It's skill based. Okay, I've got.
No, it's not. The Clutch Claw is not skill based. Absolutely not. Like once you have Iceborne, like there's an actual it may have been somewhat skill based because some people may have not even known that the Clutch Claw's real abilities existed when World first came out. Like maybe some players figured it out and figured out how to use it and things like that, but some players just didn't even know the Clutch Claw existed. I was one of those people. I didn't know the Clutch Claw existed when World first came out. I had no idea about the mechanic of the Clutch Claw at all. And it wasn't until Iceborne came out that I actually knew everything about it, because there's an entire tutorial in Iceborne. Like once you have Iceborne, there's an entire tutorial about how to use the Clutch Claw, and it will teach you everything you need to know about how to use the Clutch Claw. And none of it is skill-based. None of it. It's pressing a few buttons to be able to grab onto a monster and smash him into a wall, or smash him into something else, or stun them, or whatever you're wanting to do with it. Like all of that is incredibly simple to use. I would actually argue that actually mastering your weapons mechanics is way more difficult than using a Clutch Claw.
Dot points here that I wrote down because I know I'm going to forget. You removed it completely. And then what do we get in return for that? For not having clutch claw at all? We get focus mode.
Yeah, focus mode, which in my opinion, I actually think is a much better mechanic. Personally, I personally like it better than the clutch claw. Like I have said that I kind of miss the clutch claw a little bit because it was kind of fun just being able to grab onto a monster and just, basically half mount it and do a couple of things with it. Like, yes, that was kind of fun to do. So in a way, I do kind of miss the clutch claw. But the focus mode, once I've actually gotten the hang of using it and using it a lot and actually wounding monsters with it, like, there's just no comparison. I absolutely love the wound mechanic way more, because it actually has some skill involved with it. It's still not much. It's still pretty easy to use. Once you actually know how the mechanic works, it's pretty easy to use. I think just getting used to it and knowing what settings to change in the main menu, like changing it to changing it from, holding the I use controller, so from holding the left trigger to doing a toggle, that helped a lot for me, to make that mechanic both easier on my hand as well as just easier to use in game, personally. So I personally think that the focus mode is better than the clutch claw in a lot of ways. It is a little weird that like hitting the wound immediately stuns pretty much everything. The only nice thing about that is that even though it's stunned, like you're also stuck in an animation for your for breaking the wound. So there's no extra damage being done during that time, unless you're playing multiplayer. There may be some shenanigans with that, I suppose.
Focus mode, Capcom. Well done. Honestly, you are up there. You are, oh my god, you are so smart. I just don't understand why you want to remove. Why would you want to remove one of the most satisfying and tactical things that you could ever do when it comes to monster hunting?
I wouldn't consider the clutch claw one of the most tactical things you could do. Sure, there were definitely tactical ways to use it, but once people learned how to use the clutch claw, like once it became a main mechanic that people were essentially exploiting in the game, it trivializes a majority of the monsters in base game world. Like when I got good at the clutch claw, when I got really good at the clutch claw and actually good at like making sure I can hit the clutch claw like 90% of the time, because sometimes I was just like too far away and wasn't judging the distance or whatever, or I would clutch claw at the wrong time and get knocked off. But once I got really good at the clutch claw, like I started a new game on World before playing Wilds, and I remembered the clutch claw existed, and I went through the clutch claw tutorial and started using it, and I defeated an Anjanath like in one of my early missions, where like several missions before you're supposed to actually fight the thing. So I mean, it trivialized a good portion of the early game. A good portion of the mid game was a lot easier because of the clutch claw, because I was just able to clutch onto somebody, clutch onto the monster, and just beat the hell out of it. Since I now have changed from what I previously used, I used the bow, and I'd used the dual blades previously. I'd also done the light bow gun. I changed to using the hunting horn. And when I changed to using the hunting horn, actually being able to hit like a Rathian or Rathalos when they're up in the air, like using the clutch claw absolutely made that easier. But, I mean, I don't think that it's more tactical. I don't think it's the most tactical thing that has been in Monster Hunter at all. I don't think wounds is either. I think the only thing really tactical about wounds at this point for me is the fact that I can bust the wounds when I need healing. And also fighting some of the new monsters, like breaking their wounds is important for their mechanics. But other than that, I don't think it's more tactical to do it. Like mastering my songs and stuff on the hunting horn has way more tactical usage than and practical usage, not just tactical, but practical usage in a fight and practical for multiplayer as well. Because I can both attack and be a support for my friends who are playing with me. So I like that may just be my personal take on that because I use the hunting horn now. But I mean, even so, like I don't think the clutch claw was super tactical. People just exploited the hell out of it. Like I can say this from experience. I'm one of the people who did. I exploited the hell out of the clutch claw and I used it all the time simply because it was super easy to do.
Good job. All right, sweet. So now we can only clutch claw things that are in the environment. Stalagmites, stalactites, whatever the fuck they are called, I don't know.
The wedge beetles. The wedge beetles are still there, so you can still use those. And honestly, like the wedge beetles and like the different rock formations you can grab onto in Wild, I think offer a far more tactical usage because instead of being able to like half mount the monster, like using those actually allows you to do a full mount and actually get on and do some massive damage to the monster. So
the pillars on the roof. That's the only thing we can clutch claw. Things in the environment to help us fight monsters. Good job. That's...
To be honest, that actually makes more sense than being able to clutch onto most of the monsters. Because clutching onto the monster, like while it can make sense in some ways, in other ways it kind of doesn't, because like some of the monsters have big hard scales and stuff like that on them. Like your clutch claw's not breaking into that. Like your weapons barely damage those scales. So like you have to pound and pound and pound on some of the monsters in World and on Wilds that have the heavier scales to do decent amounts of damage and stuff. So I mean, I just don't understand why it's such a big deal to change from the clutch claw and have the clutch claw only be used to limited use now, because it's not necessarily entirely gone. You can still use the slinger to grab onto wedge beetles and, like he said, like the pillars and stuff. So just using the environment to your advantage rather than just being able to directly... It's actually more skill-based now than it was previously, because now you actually need to have like positioning and things like that down for clutching onto things to either pull them down to do damage or to like grab onto a wedge beetle and get on and mount a monster. So
rewarding. That's so fun.
When you use the mechanic properly, it is actually. It is very fun when you actually start getting the positioning and stuff down. It can be incredibly fun to just straight up mount a monster from the top, especially since we also now have the added bonus of using the Sacred. I think there was a mount thing in Iceborne that I never got to, as well as a mount that you can use that's like an on-rails mount in Rise that I never, like I said, I never played Rise. But the Sacred is great. Like if you actually use the Sacred, you can use the Sacred in a bunch of tactical ways to be able, like if you get stunned on the ground, or not really stunned, but if you get knocked to the ground and have to wait for your character to get up to be able to do anything, instead of waiting for your character to get up, you just whistle for your Sacred picks you up. You can go off to the side, heal real quick, and then get right back into the fight without taking any additional damage. So, as well as the Sacred's ability to be in the air for short periods of time, you can actually use dismounting the Sacred to mount monsters as well.
I'm so tilted, honestly. Focus mode, okay? This is like... This makes fights feel so slow and sluggish and unrewarding. I don't even know if that's a fucking word. I don't feel rewarded enough, Capcom, okay? What else do I have?
Well, what do you mean you don't feel rewarded enough? Like, I'm sure you're going to go into that here in a second, but what do you mean by slow and sluggish? Most of the, like, if you're obviously coming from a previous Monster Hunter game, and obviously that previous Monster Hunter game is World and Iceborne, right? You're coming from World and Iceborne with the Clutch Claw. So, since you're coming from World and Iceborne with the Clutch Claw, how long did it take to do fights in World and Iceborne? Like, I had fights in Iceborne against things like the Anjanath and up higher as you got higher, fighting like the Rathian and Rathalos and having to chase them around and everything all the time. I had fights that would last, 20, 30, sometimes even 40 minutes running up on that end of that timer that they have for the mission to fight one monster. And some of that may be my own skill, sure. But I think the longest fight that I had in low rank was the very last fight in low rank, and it still only took me 25 minutes to do that fight. I never had a fight before then last longer than 20 minutes. Everything before then, like I had fights that only lasted 7.5 minutes. Fighting by myself, like not even in multiplayer, just fighting by myself, had fights that lasted 7.5, 8 minutes. Like I think my average fight time is like 10 or 11 minutes for each fight. So the fights themselves are actually faster in Wilds, from my experience, than they were in World. And the whole rewarding thing, you get far more rewards from the fights from this. Like you're not actually having to go out and fight monsters, 5, 6, 7, 8 times to get all of the materials necessary to make weapons and armor. Like, you might have to go out and fight it a few times. Like, you might have to go out and fight it 3 or 4 times, maybe, if you're wanting to make, like, a full set of armor and a weapon, or maybe there's 2 different weapons that require the same materials that you're wanting to make. Sure, there is the possibility that you may have to do that in Wilds. But a majority of the time when I was making weapons and armor in Wilds, or have been making weapons and armor in Wilds, I don't think I've had to fight anything more than 3 times. Like, I fought the signature... I'm not going to say its name, but the White Wraith that they talk about in the game. Like, I'm sure it's been spoiled for a bunch of people already. But the White Wraith that you talk about in the game, that's the armor that I'm currently using, is the armor made from that White Wraith. And I've only fought it once on my own, and then I helped a friend fight it in his game, but didn't even need any of the materials from that fight, that second fight, to make both a hunting horn and a full set of armor for that particular monster. So, like, the rewards are actually, like, I think they're actually skewed to a point to where it's actually too rewarding to fight monsters now. Like, there's way less grind than in, from what I understand, any previous Monster Hunter game, and not just World or Rise.
Have here. It forces lock-on mechanics. So instead of feeling like I'm actually doing something, worthwhile, you make me hold down Shift on the PC, which is to turn on the focus ability, and I can see the weak points where I've attacked the monsters the most. Awesome.
Or you can change the setting and make it toggle. So if you're using keyboard, you just tap Shift, and it puts you into focus mode. And then if you want to come out of focus mode, you just tap Shift again, or stow your weapon, or get on your sacred, like whatever it may be, and you pull yourself out of focus mode. It's actually not focusing. It's not forcing lock-on mechanics. You can fight in Wilds without accessing the wound system at all. In fact, or without using focus mode, I should say specifically. In fact, for both the betas that I played, I didn't even access focus mode. I didn't even realize that it was a mechanic. Now, again, that might come down to my own stupidity and not realizing that the mechanic exists. But I didn't even know that focus mode was a thing in the betas. And when the game first came out, I was like, okay, I don't know if this focus mode is really what I want to use, because I tried it out and I was like, I don't like that I have to hold it down or anything like that, because I was dumb and didn't look through the settings on my own. It actually took me finding in one of those tip videos that actually gave me the tip to go in and change that to toggle mode, because I didn't realize that was an option. And maybe this guy doesn't either. It's possible that you don't realize that you can change that to toggle mode rather than a holding down Shift.
That's good to know. But then what do you want me to do? You force me, which is not really hard at all, to hit those weak points in focus mode and let the animation
Not really. It's not forced. You, like I said, I actually for the first few fights, first few monster fights in Monster Hunter Wilds, I didn't even engage with the focus mode mechanic whatsoever. I was like almost to the White Wraith before I actually started using it. I think I was like two or maybe three fights before the White Wraith that I actually started using the focus mode mechanic. You can still break wounds, you just don't see them. So you can still break wounds and stuff like that. You're just not seeing them because you're not in focus mode. So the wounds mechanic is still working. You're just not actually engaging with it, which you can do just fine in the game for the most part, barring some specific monster fights that you have to do where using the wound mechanic actually helps in those fights quite a lot. But other than that, like, you can play through a good majority of the game without even engaging with the focus mode mechanic at all.
All the while I'm sitting here, picking my nose, doing fuck all. Games like Destiny 2, you know, I see it all the time. Destiny 2 on Steam. Even, I didn't write it down. What's the other game? Final Fantasy, right? I'm pretty sure Final Fantasy 14. Is it 14? They have DLC that are going on for years. And look how well Destiny 2 is doing still. Even though I think it's not that good anymore. Tell me, did you really think that if you were to keep on doing DLCs for Monster Hunter World, that players would like eventually drop out?
Yes, players would eventually drop out. That happens with every Monster Hunter game. So there are going to be people, even with Wilds, like while Wilds is incredibly successful, I think the last I checked, it peaked at 1.3 million players on Steam and has something like 8 million copies sold. So it's by far the most successful Monster Hunter game, I think, ever, and not just of recent years. I think ever it's the most successful Monster Hunter game. So it's an incredibly successful Monster Hunter game. But even with Wilds, people are going to get through low rank, then they're going to get through high rank. They'll do what they want to do in high rank after they've completed it. Like they'll complete the side quests, they'll do that kind of thing. You know, maybe they'll make every single weapon and armor available to them just because they can, whatever. But eventually the player numbers will drop off. We'll have probably a decently massive drop in players after they've completed everything. Of course, that first patch is supposed to be coming, I believe, in April or May, something or somewhere around there. Or maybe it might even be March, and I might just be wrong about that. But that first patch that's going to add another monster, sure, there's like any of the players who dropped off before that patch will probably come back for that patch for that new monster. And I think this plan is actually a better plan for Capcom to actually keep players engaged with the game longer, because they're going to slow drip monsters into the game. Like, I think slow dripping monsters into the game is a good idea, because then you'll have some people who will come back for each patch who maybe dropped off the game before, that will come back to fight these new monsters that you're slow dripping into the game. Now, when you go into like what World would do with another DLC, sure. I mean, we saw what happened with Iceborne. When World came out, it was very popular. Eventually, when people did everything they wanted to do in the game, they dropped off. Iceborne came out, and we saw a spike in player usage. Saw the player base go up because Iceborne came out. But then once people did what they wanted to do in Iceborne, they dropped off again. And I mean, that's the way it is with games. I mean, you mentioned Destiny 2. Destiny 2 has been the same way, and I haven't played Destiny 2 in forever, but from what I've seen with Destiny 2, each time they come out with an expansion, the player numbers rise for a while, and then they drop back down because people want to experience the new content, they experience the new content, and then they dip. They go back to whatever game that they were playing before, or whatever new games are coming out to replace it. So it's not a case of, oh, let's just have World be a game that continually gets expansions. For one, expanding on the new world would have been, like, while it may have worked a bit, people would at this point, especially now that we've seen Wilds and other games have such high graphical fidelity and the ability to make and the ability to make games look so good, because even Wilds, while some people say it looks washed out, you can adjust the settings a little bit to make them not look so washed out. But besides that, like the character models, the monsters, even the environments, to me look just way better than they did in World. Like everything graphically looks better than they did in World, and to do that with World, like you'd have to update the whole game to an entirely new engine, or like, because I think World was built on I may be wrong, but I think World was built on a different engine than Wilds is, because Wilds is using the RE engine. I don't know if World used the RE engine. I can't remember, but all I know is Wilds looks great, and it looks better than World did. It looks better than Iceborne. So, and from what I've seen of Rise, it looks better than Rise did. So while there may be some complaints right now about like performance issues on PC and stuff like that, other than that, the game looks and plays like one of the best Monster Hunter games out there. So I don't see why adding more DLC to World would have kept the player numbers up more consistently. Because adding another DLC to World, while there may be some people, like even myself, that would have been fairly okay with them just doing another like Iceborne-like expansion to the game and just continuing to expand on the game, I absolutely would have been okay with it. But again, the player numbers would still have dropped off. Yeah, you'd see a spike, but they'd drop off, and I don't think they would have seen the same numbers that Wilds has.
No, Capcom, why are you scared of that? This is Monster Hunter World. How successful was fucking Iceborne? Look at Iceborne's success rate. It's almost more successful than the actual bloody game, Monster Hunter World, the base game.
You're right. It was almost more successful than the game itself, than the original game. You're right. But it's not nearly as successful as Wilds has been.
Do you know why? Because it pretty much is. Everyone loves the mechanics of Monster Hunter World. Everyone loves that you can clutch claw. Everything that you showed in Monster Hunter World as the base game, people loved. But the problem was, there wasn't enough challenges, in my opinion, okay? It was more story-based. You know, Xeno'jiiva as the final boss. That basically, you know, compared to like Fatalis as Iceborne's last boss, and Alatreon, however you pronounce it. Okay, it was more of like a cinematic game. Cinematic boss fights.
I would actually argue that World was less story-based than Wilds is. Wilds actually is a lot more story-based than World was. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. There are some people that are memeing on Nata and stuff like that, and they think he's annoying. But I from my experience with World, now Iceborne may have been different. I didn't play much of Iceborne, so I can't really comment on that. But the base game of World, while the very beginning has its like story elements, once you pass Zora Magdaros, like all the fights with Zora Magdaros, a good majority of the story beats of World are done. Like there's not a whole lot of true story moments after Zora Magdaros, and the rest of it is hunting. I will agree with you a bit in that I don't think that there was enough challenges in base game of World, and that Iceborne did for a lot of people solve that issue. But again, the only reason why we really saw a spike in people playing Monster Hunter World before playing Monster Hunter Wilds was because Wilds was coming out, and people were basically getting back into the jump of things for Wilds because people knew that from different interviews and things being talked about from like early access alpha people and the beta people, basically saying that it plays a lot like World, and it does to an extent. So it's basically like World expanded, just without the clutch claw. Like that's kind of what Wilds is. It's just a better version of World without the clutch claw.
Iceborne was bloody amazing, and the fact that you did not decide to do another DLC or even more DLCs is blowing my mind. I just can't believe you completely abandoned Monster Hunter World and just decided to reboot another game. Okay, let's not even talk about Monster Hunter Rise. I haven't even played it. I haven't even watched the trailer. I just know it's shit. Okay, I have a radar for these things. You can ask my closest friends. For example, Cyberpunk 2077. I knew before it came out, I was like, this game is going to be completely dog shit and it's not going to be ready.
Okay, so couple things. From what I've heard from my friends and people that play way more Monster Hunter than I do, that Rise wasn't shit. And don't dog shit on 2077. Yeah, it had some problems at launch, but even when I bought it at launch, the game still looked good. It still played well. The story was still good. Like, I didn't have nearly as many of the like problems that other people had. Sure, my game crashed sometimes and things like that, or I had some frame rate issues sometimes, but those are basically the nature of having video games on a PC environment. It is a bit worse in this day and age where, you know, games kind of come out half-baked, and Wilds in itself probably could have used a little bit of more time in the oven to hammer out some of like the performance issues that it's been having and things like that. But like, barring those few issues, and especially like the crashing issues, I have had a few crashing issues with Wilds, but I mean, barring those few issues, I mean, why is it such a weird thing that they would want to, like, it's not even a new IP. It's just a new game. It's just a new game. You could make the same argument with any video game ever. You could make the same argument with any video game ever. Well, why didn't you just continue this? Why didn't you just continue that? Like, why did Final Fantasy 14 not just continue making Final Fantasy 14 content and not have, you know, Square Enix and them make, you know, Final Fantasy 15 and 16? Why did they go ahead and make 15 and 16 when 14 has been so successful once they did Realm Reborn? Like, why did they feel the need to make 15 and 16? It's because creative minds are going to be creative. And one of the best ways to be creative is to actually be able to make something new, even if that something new is in an existing IP. It's one of the reasons why Resident Evil should make new games. It's one of the reasons why Resident Evil 7 was good. One of the reasons why Resident Evil 8 was good is because they used an IP that had kind of gone stagnant and reinvented it. They remade it and made it better. And people really loved 7, and I believe there's a lot of love for 8 as well. So, like, because it actually, like, went back to some horror elements and stuff, and it kind of went back to its roots. And maybe that's something that the Monster Hunter team wanted to do too. Maybe they wanted to get away from what they were going with World and you know, not really reboot. But I know Rise had some returning monsters from World and other previous games, and I think it added a couple of monsters because I think each game adds new monsters that they make. Like with Wilds, one of the new monsters is the Lalabarina. It's a brand new monster to Wilds. It wasn't in any of the previous games. It has an amazing design. I don't really see why that's an argument for them to just continue making expansions or DLC for World, especially when World it's not a live service game. Most people hate live service games because of the fact that it's all they do is just want to pump more money out of you. And with this, at least, we're getting something new. We're getting something new that they took years to make, that they put out new for us to do. And it's not like they completely abandoned World and Iceborne. They even give you bonuses for having played those games in Wilds. So I guess I just don't understand why you would need more DLC for World rather than a new game.
I said that to my mates when we were living together and they didn't believe me. And then what do you know? Everyone talks shit about Cyberpunk for not being ready. It's not, you know, they rushed it. You know, I have a sixth sense for these things, and I just feel like Capcom is doing the exact same thing here. They're just making another game just for the sake of it. Is it all for money? Is it all for money?
Yes. They're a game company. They're a company. They want to make money. The only way they keep their doors open and their employees paid is by making money. So they're going to do the things that they're going to do that they think are going to make them the most money.
Capcom, is that what you're focused on? Right?
Well, there's another thing too, though, that I can argue as well. Cyberpunk 2077, even though it had its issues, it was still a good game. The story was still there. It was still a great story. Fantastic game from CD Projekt Red. I'm actually disappointed that we're not getting more DLC for Cyberpunk 2077 because they're wanting to focus on other things because it took them so long to fix Cyberpunk. So we only got the Phantom Liberty DLC, and we're not going to get any more. We may be getting another game in the Cyberpunk like realm of things, but I mean, I guess I'll just have to see how Witcher 4 is when it comes out, see if it comes out well or not. And with your Sixth Sense, I'm wondering if you had a Sixth Sense about Wilds, about whether or not it was going to be half-baked when it released. Or did you think that it was going to be polished? Because a good majority of the game, other than issues with online play, some frame rate drops, performance issue kind of things, other than that, the game's pretty polished.
Who knows? Gemma, a hot anime smithy waifu.
Gemma's great. Not just because she's Gooner bait. Gemma is great. One of the things that I like about Wilds is that, unlike in World, a lot of the side characters in Wilds are actually like characters, not necessarily with all of them having their own arcs or anything. Nata certainly has an arc. He's basically, other than the player character, he is essentially the other main character of the story. He has his own story arc and things like that. He grows as a character, and he has changes that he makes along the way with the things that he sees and observes from being in this like outside world that he's never experienced before. Gemma is great. Sure, she's attractive and she's definitely Gooner bait. I can definitely say that. But all the argument you're really making with it being any kind of, like, the title of this section says it's cheap marketing. Of course it's marketing. Of course it is. Just compare it to a game like Conquered that went down in less than what, like 11 days, I think it was, that Conquered failed. Like, this is all you're really going to pose is that there is an argument for putting attractive human models in your games, not just of females, but also attractive male models as well, to be able to use for marketing for games, to be able to pull people in, to get them initially invested. And it also helps that Gemma is not just there as something for you to look at. She's actually a character. She actually has like things that she has to say. She has her opinions on things. And she even, like, in cutscenes and things like that, she's actually a character who gets excited about different things and stuff like that. She's a person. She's not just a PNG bump map of a blonde chick with boobs for you to stare at.
What the fuck? What the fuck? That is such a cheap marketing scheme by you. Like, am I the only one who feels that way? Yeah, previous
You're probably not the only one who feels that way.
smithies, right? They felt rugged, you know, experienced, and they fit the world, you know? They fit the world, bro.
I would argue that Gemma fits the world just fine. I mean, look at the other members of Avis Unit. I mean, unless you make your character some big buff guy, which I didn't. I usually in Monster Hunter games I have played the girl characters. I have made male characters and they're just fine. I just don't. I just have never really enjoyed playing the male characters. I like playing the female characters. But partially because their armor has looked better in previous games. In this game, that matters way less because the armors are unisex, so you can use whatever armor you want. But like, you're probably not the only one who feels that way about it. But when you look at the other people, like when you look at the other members of Baby's Unit, you look at Nata, you look at Alma, and your Palico, even Olivia, like all of them to some extent, and Olivia is not even a part of Avis unit. She's part of the other unit that's there, the Astrum unit. Her and Werner and Eric. The fact that I know their names, but I don't know the blacksmith's name from World. I don't know the attendant's name from World. I remember the Admiral. I remember him. I don't know what his actual name is, but I remember the Admiral. And that's about it. Part of what they've done with Wilds is they've turned the side characters into characters. Granted, not all of them, but at least the main cast that you're looking at for basically the whole game, a good majority of them are their own characters and have their own personalities and things like that that you have to kind of deal with or, work around throughout the story. So it's like they've actually made memorable characters in a Monster Hunter game for once.
I remember as soon as I saw, what was it? I don't know what it was, but the introduction to the state of play or whatever it was, and we got the trailer, and we saw the Smitty, the hot anime biddy. Yeah, nice. Okay, nice. She looks hot, man. Wow, I'm gonna buy the game now. Oh my god.
I'm sure there are some Gooners who definitely bought the game because of Gemma. I'm not gonna lie about that. But Gemma also has equipment and stuff, and being blacksmith doesn't inherently mean that you have to be, some like huge buff man or whatever to be able to do it. So
God, I'm such a loser, but look at the Smithy. Oh my god. I'm gonna spend $110 on that. Like, holy shit, she's fucking hot, Capcom. Look at what you did, man.
Well, I didn't spend $110 on the game because of Gemma. She was not the main draw to the game for me. The main draw to any Monster Hunter game for me is, hunting the monsters, since that is like the name of the game. And I enjoyed World, and I enjoyed what I played of Iceborne. And when I found out that Wilds was basically going to be World but better, I was like, damn, that sounds great. And I looked at the add-ons that you could get for the $110. And I'm not saying anybody needs to buy those things. Like, they only matter if you really care about getting the cosmetics or the 2 cosmetic DLCs that are coming out for it. Like, I personally just thought, yay, I like this game. I want to support it as much as I can. I'm basically going to vote with my wallet, and I voted with my wallet. And I didn't make that decision until after I'd played the betas. Because originally I was only planning on buying the standard edition of the game. But after playing the betas and experiencing the game, experiencing fighting the monsters in the betas, I fell in love with the game and decided to buy the highest version of it.
Is it just me, or does she look like she's cosplaying? She doesn't
No, she doesn't look like she's cosplaying.
fit the fantasy world at all.
Yeah, she does. She's dressed just as ridiculously as anybody else in the game, okay? So everybody is dressed ridiculous. I mean, look at the armors that you can make in the game. You can make your character and your Palico look like fucking abominations. Like, there is absolutely nothing stopping you from making the most out there looking armor you can possibly make for both yourself and the Palico. And make you can change skin colors and stuff like that. You can make yourself look absolutely weird as hell in the game. Like, this is not really a good argument. Other characters in the game wear even skimpier things than she is, especially when you go to the oil well basin. So, because it's hot there, so they're wearing less clothing because it's fucking hot.
Is this you just trying to justify selling a full price game? You know what I mean?
No, they're selling a full price game because they've put just as much content that was at least in the base game of World into another game, if not more content. The only like you could make the argument that there's less content because there's less side missions early in the game, and investigations have basically gone away, and have been. But the investigations didn't really go away; they just got replaced with the overworld hunts, where since it's an open world now, and you can literally walk from zone to zone without a loading screen, that you can just do hunts of things out there, and those are your investigations. So they've added quite a lot to this to make it a different game. They've made it far better than World was, with the whole selecting a different area and going to it and all this other junk. They basically did what Pokemon Scarlet and Violet tried to do on the Switch and make it an open world game, only in this they actually succeeded.
Because that it's not worth a full price game.
It absolutely is. It's absolutely worth full price. There's an argument that could be made for full price games being too high a price right now, but at the same time, the prices of games haven't gone up in years and years and years, so there could be an argument made for, yes, it makes some sense for them to raise their pricing on games.
Only making a full price game because it has the title Monster Hunter in it, right? Right. I don't even want to talk about the performance issues, okay? I don't know, look, it's just a beta. It's just a beta. But Capcom,
I suppose that this should be prefaced. This video came out before the release of Monster Hunter Wilds, so all this guy would have had any experience with is the betas. So there's that.
I joined a server, so you can have up to 100 people in this open world, okay? You can have up to 100 people. I joined a server that had about 60 people in it, and my PC almost died, went to heaven, got revived, and I killed it again.
Yep, there's some optimization issues with that as well, but 60 people, that's a lot. That's a lot of people to be in one game. Granted, they're not all running around the overworld together in that, from what I understand. I don't really play in the large multiplayer lobbies. I pretty much just play in a link party with my friends, but which you can only have a link party with up to 4. So,
like, my stream, I looked at my VOD, okay? I'll look back at my VOD. I had about 1 frame every 3-4 seconds. That is absolutely fucking disgusting.
You were also playing a beta, like a beta version of the game. And some of those issues did get hammered out in the launch day patch. So.
It took 5 years. 5 years. 5 years, Capcom.
Yeah, it takes a long time to make games nowadays. Even small indie titles can take years to make. Making a game is not as simple as it used to be in back when I was a kid. Back when I was a kid, you could have a new game come out from the same game company every year, and it would be built on, sometimes they'd be built on different engines or the same engines, but they were able to hammer out games in a year, maybe 2 years at the most, and get games out. Sometimes they came out, you'd hear about a game and it would come out like 4 months later because they'd start production on it like they maybe produced it for 8 months, and then they were able to get it out. Because games were a lot less graphically intense as games are now. They were also much less ridiculed for their graphic fidelity and stuff like that than games are today. A lot of games today, if it's not up to people's graphics standards, they'll just call it a shit game because it doesn't look pretty enough.
It took you 5 years. Oh my god, I can't wait to get into open world. Oh my god, I get into a world, there's 60 people, but oh my god, I can only see about 2 frames of them every 10 seconds. 5 years.
Yeah, the server quality is not that great. That has more to do with like That has more to do with how they handled the multiplayer than the actual game itself.
What were you doing in those 5 years?
They were making a game.
What are you doing in those 5 years that you could have done for Monster Hunter World?
They would not have been able to make Monster Hunter World into an open world game like they did with Wilds. It would have taken a complete rework of the game from literally the ground up. They would have had to redo, and this is only from my own limited knowledge on how intense making an open world game is. But making that open world game would have taken taking the game and completely reworking everything from basically from ground zero all the way up. They would have had to change basically everything about the game to make it open world, especially if you wanted it to have the multiplayer aspects that Wilds has. So in other words, it was just easier to make a new game and start from scratch than it was to rework currently existing stuff.
I said this in my live stream review. Fireborn, Iceborn. No, we already did Iceborn. Fireborn, Godborn, freaking Skyborn, freaking Tundraborn. Bloody fuck me up the arseborn. Like, I don't know. Oh, I don't
That fuck me up the ass born. That's pretty good.
know anything.
I bet you if they made "Fuck Me Up the Assborn," they would have definitely had Gemma as the cover for that.
I feel like Capcom thought, you know what, we see Destiny 2, we see other games that bring out DLC over the years, and the game and the players dramatically and increasingly go down at a slope. Listen to me, Capcom. Do you genuinely think that if you kept on bringing out DLCs for Monster Hunter fucking World, that players would dramatically decrease and you would lose more money?
Yes, I answered this before, but yes, players would dramatically decrease. Players would get tired of paying for the same game over and over and over and over again. It's one of the reasons why live service games and large subscription games have gone away. It's a lot of large-scale MMOs have switched to a live service model because it is more sustainable than the subscription model is. Only titans like Final Fantasy XIV and World of Warcraft and EVE Online have been able to keep a portion of their subscription model because of how successful those games are. But even those games see dips in their people going to it. Like, so many people quit World of Warcraft and went to Final Fantasy XIV Reborn, a Realm Reborn, because it was seen as the better quality game. It was seen as a better time because of what they were going through in World of Warcraft. So yes, I do believe that if they had spent more time just making additional worlds and DLC for World, that they would have saw player drop off because they would not have been actually improving upon the game. They may have been able to make small improvements and things, but they wouldn't have been able to make the large scale improvements that they've made making a new game like Wilds.
No.
Yes, they would have. Absolutely.
You would get more players. Okay, this is coming from someone who's like a seasoned Monster Hunter World fanboy, okay?
You wouldn't get more players. Like I said before, you might get an increase in players as the new DLCs came out, but then they would drop back down again. So like each new DLC or whatever expansion, whatever it may be that they would come out with, you would see a spike in players, and to experience the new content, once they would have experienced that new content, the player numbers would drop right back down to their normal player numbers again, or possibly even less because of people maybe not enjoying the new content that they made.
I don't even want to look at Rise, because Rise started as a fucking console game, as I'm pretty sure, from memory, and then they just put it onto the fucking PC because they wanted, they knew that the players of Monster Hunter World were not playing it as much anymore because they weren't bringing out any fucking DLCs for one, but because
Yeah, there wasn't any more content for World to come out because they were more focused on Rise. Sure, so they ported it to the PC to get the PC market to play Rise. Yeah, it's what a lot of PC players actually want more companies to do, is port console-only games to PC so that we can enjoy them without having to purchase a console to be able to enjoy them.
Because there's been a long gap in between, and then people go, oh my god, Monster Hunter Rise, let's get it on PC already. So they did it, and then it's fucking dog shit, right? It's dog shit.
I don't really know. I can't really comment on whether or not Rise is dog shit, but like I said, from what I've been told from my friends and stuff, that Rise is still a good Monster Hunter game. I just haven't experienced it for myself. It just didn't look like something that I wanted to play personally.
Like, fuck me, man. So do you really think players would not buy your DLC? Because I'll fucking tell you right now, Capcom, we would.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, there would be players that would buy the DLC. Absolutely. You're not wrong there. There would absolutely be people who would buy DLC. There's players who bought literally every cosmetic that came out for World and Iceborne. So, and I think that was one of the problems that World and Iceborne had, was a good majority of the DLC content that they had for the game was cosmetics. It was both a good and a bad. It was good because the only thing that they were trying to really monetize was character customization, which I'm perfectly okay with. It was bad because none of the DLCs really added any new monsters, with the exception of Iceborne. Iceborne was a full-on expansion that people paid for, and yeah, it expanded the game. It adds something like 20 hours or so worth of gameplay to the game. So it was worth it to buy the expansion because of that. But it also took them, what was it, like a year or 2 years or something like that for Iceborne to come out after World? So they basically started working on Iceborne probably right after they got done with World and saw that World was a success, and decided to capitalize on the success of World by making an expansion. Because in all honesty, if World hadn't done as well as it did, they probably wouldn't even have made Iceborne. They probably would have moved directly onto something like Rise after World instead.
My god, I'll pay $110 for another DLC in Monster Hunter World without a blink of an eye. But I'm in a 50-50 decision right now for Monster Hunter Wilds. Like, holy shit! Right. Capcom, you're going in the wrong direction. I'm telling you.
I don't think they are. I really don't think they are. I think that they made the right decision in making a new game, especially with the types of changes that they made to make Wilds. I do think that this was the right move. I don't think that they would have been able to do this with what they had built for World. I don't think that this would have worked as an expansion to World. I don't think that it would have worked as slow drip DLC into World or anything like that. I think the only way they could have really made this work feasibly and actually like cut production costs and things like that is to make a new game.
I'm not afraid to speak the truth, okay? I'm not afraid to speak the truth of the gaming era, the gaming world, the gaming space. You made a mistake, and I think you're about to sit in it. Don't get me wrong, people are going to buy this game.
Now, granted, he doesn't have, in this video, he doesn't have the perception of what has happened with the launch of Wilds, and seeing that Wilds is by far the most successful launch of any Monster Hunter game ever, with Steam peaking at 1.3 million players and having over 8 million copies sold within the first week of launch. Those are incredibly impressive numbers for any game, let alone Monster Hunter.
I mean, they're going to play it, but mark my words, watch the graphs. People will buy this game, it'll spike up, and then guess what? It'll stay up there for a little bit, and it'll fucking crumble. Do you know why? Because seasoned Monster Hunter World veteran players like myself are going to commit back to the base game. How many times have you seen this, guys? How many times have you seen this in the gaming era? Right? What are examples I can think of? Oh my god, there's so many. I can't even think on the top of my head, but there's so many.
If there's so many examples, you should be able to think one.
Situations where there's a game, people go, oh my god, this game's so good, and then the developers go, hey, you know what, let's do another game, all right, a sequel, and people go, this is not the bloody same game. This isn't the same fucking game that I found.
Of course it's not. It's a new game. That's why they do it. You say what players want. You say they don't get what players want. I think players have wanted a new Monster Hunter, whether it was a DLC or a new game. I think a lot of Monster Hunter players just wanted more Monster Hunter. And so whether Rise was a disappointment to some players or not, I do think that like making Rise was like a step towards what they did. Like making World, making Iceborne, and making Rise was a step towards them making Wilds. And it's entirely possible that they may do exactly what you're saying that they should have done with World, that they may be able to do with Wilds. They may be able to make an expansion, like may be able to do exactly what they did with Iceborne, where they have like an island that's off to the side that we explore later on, or something like that, or maybe even go to another continent, something like that. You know, there is endless possibilities that could happen from Wild, and the fact that like 90% of the game is completely open world, that's with little to no loading screens for the rest of the 10% that isn't open world, and I might even be overestimating that 10%. Like, this game is by far one of, if not the most successful Monster Hunter games ever. It was so successful that other game companies had to make basically a holiday day on February 28th when it released, so that they could stay home and play the new Monster Hunter. That's wild.
Fell in love with, and then they go back to the first game. How many times has this happened?
Not a whole lot. I would say that there's not a whole lot of times that people fall in love with a newer game and then go back to the first game because the newer game disappointed them. Like, I don't, like, maybe that happens. Sure, it may have happened with me a bit. The only thing that I can think of that really disappointed me to that degree was Dungeon Defenders. And that is, like, the first game was so good, and then everything that came after it just kind of was not great, in my opinion. I had kind of the same deal with Fable. Like, Fable 1 was great. Fable 2 was still okay. Fable 3, I just didn't like the story and the way that it went. I didn't like the time skips and stuff like that you had to do in the story. Like, so I would have much rather played Fable 1 or 2 than playing Fable 3, simply because I didn't like the way that Fable 3 went, the direction they went with it. But now there's going to be a new Fable game come out, and I'm eager to see what they do with it. But like, I don't think that players, especially with the hindsight of seeing how many people have bought the game and how many people are playing the game, I don't think that people are going to be sharing your opinion on this.
When are developers going to learn? When are companies in the gaming world going to learn? I feel like people who work for these fucking companies aren't players. They don't understand.
I would agree there. A lot of gaming companies do have people that aren't playing the games. They don't really understand their audience, and that's why they continue making games that continue to not succeed as much as previous titles or as other titles from other developers, because other developers listen to their player base. Good example of that is Scarlet and Violet compared to Arceus on the Switch. Arceus, for a lot of people, is their favorite Pokemon game that's on the Switch. Scarlet and Violet had a lot of performance issues still to this day, where it's just not a great game to play on the Switch because of those performance issues. It works better than it did at launch, but it's still not great. Some mechanics that people liked in Arceus are not in Scarlet and Violet, even though it seemed to be implied that that was the direction they were going. And then they just didn't go in that direction. So now people are looking forward to Pokemon Legends ZA and hoping that Pokemon Legends ZA is going to capture that same magic that Arceus did, because Scarlet and Violet just didn't. So Yeah, I agree that there are definitely game companies out there that don't listen to their player base and don't listen to what they want. Ubisoft is a good example of that. They don't listen to their player base as to what they want, and they keep making live service games and dipping into the NFT market and stuff like that, and finding out that their core player base is is not down for that.
Understand how players think and feel. How many times have you heard the community say, make another DLC?
I was in that camp too. I was absolutely in that camp too. And I mean, if they did want to go back and make another DLC and add it on to World, I would probably still buy it and go back and play World, because World is still a good game. And I may return to World at some point and play it again. But since playing Wilds, it's going to take a lot of me. Like, I'm going to have to exhaust every possible thing that I can do in Wilds before I return to World, if I even return to World, because there's a good possibility that when I do eventually put down Wilds for a little bit, that when I want to go back to a Monster Hunter game, that I may just end up coming back to Wilds and not World.
Am I the only one who thinks that way? That's pretty much all.
I don't think you're the only one that feels that way. But like I said, I was in that camp too, but I think with what they've done with Wilds, it deserved its own thing.
All I wanted to say, Capcom, you need to reevaluate your fucking decisions, because this isn't unacceptable. Your game is going to fail.
It didn't. It hasn't failed. And all the projections look like it's not going to be a failure. In fact, it is an incredible success. I don't know whether or not it's successfully made the sales that it needed to like break even or make money. But with 8 million sales, I'm sure that's more than what they projected to have in the first week.
It will fail, just like Rise did. Okay, you can say Rise was successful all you want, but guess what? You made another fucking game for a console instead of a PC. Right? That's another fucking issue I have.
I mean, it eventually came out for PC, so.
With you. Hey, you know what? We got a new game, Monster.
At least they came out with that, unlike Bloodborne. So.
Hunter Rise. Oh my god, the PC community's freaking out. A new fucking game for PC? No, it's for fucking Nintendo or Switch or whatever the fuck it was, PlayStation. I don't know what the fuck it was on, but it was on a console. That is disgusting. Who is at the head of Capcom right now?
Why is it disgusting? That's what I want to know. Like, why is it disgusting to port a console game to PC when there have been petitions put out for Bloodborne to be ported to the PC? Not even to be remade, just ported as is to the PC so that we can play it on our preferred platform. Like, there have been petitions for this, for a console game. So I don't know if you're trying to say that console games compared to PC games are trash, because they're really not. They're like, console games aren't trash. Granted, yes, PCs are far more capable. You can do far more with a PC than you can with the console, simply because PCs are essentially infinitely upgradable, and consoles aren't. But at the same time, like, the games themselves aren't trash. A lot of the games are really good, and that's why they've started coming to PC. Things like Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2 actually coming to the PC, because Spider-Man is a great game, and I'm glad that Sony is finally making some of their games, a lot of their games, available. One of the reasons why the Xbox Game Pass works on PC is because Microsoft knows that the PC gaming market is a huge market, and it would be a mistake to miss out on it.
Who is at the head of Monster Hunter? Listen to
someone who's smart and is making smart business decisions based on what he knew would make money. So whether you are happy with the fact that they didn't just make another DLC for World or not, this was definitely the smart decision to make a new game for Wilds rather than going back to a game that launched in 2016, 2017, and try to make that look like games made today.
To my words. Go back to Monster Hunter World, make another DLC. And I promise you.
Oh, good. He actually made another video I may have to react to that at some point. So it looks like this one might be a newer video about what if he got it all wrong. So I might be actually posting this like without the context of the new video. You know what? You know what? Fuck it. I didn't have this planned, but let's just, instead of making 2 videos out of it, we'll just do this.
Wow. So my last Monster Hunter Wilds video got a ton of responses, way more than I expected. 5% of the people agreed with me, and
hey, I'm one of the people responding, and I'm definitely one of the people who disagrees with you, and I haven't even posted this video yet. And you already have another video responding to responses. I'm late to the party.
95% disagreed. Completely thought I was off the mark. I've seen the comments, and I just want to address them. And I'm going to be completely forthright, honest, transparent. I was having a shitty day. I needed to get whatever it was.
Oh no, the sad music. Oh no. Oh no. It's an apology video. Oh no. Oh no. Why are you making an apology video? Don't apologize for your opinions. Your opinions are valid, whether you were having a bad day or not. Your opinions are valid. You don't need to apologize for your opinions, man.
Off of my chest, and I did that. Okay, I was just venting. I have no one to vent to. So I decided to do it on camera and upload it to YouTube.
Makes sense. Makes sense. There's a lot of people who do that.
And to my surprise, I am literally the odd one out in the community that feels this way with Monster Hunter Wilds.
Yep. That's what I figured. That's what I figured it would be.
And that's okay. You know, everyone is entitled to their own opinion. I've got to be honest, I didn't even...
Exactly. You are entitled to your opinion, and I'm entitled to mine. Like I said, you can love World, and wish they had made more DLC. Like I said before, I was in that camp with you for a little while, but I'm glad they did what they did.
Even go onto my YouTube studio for a good day or two, and then I come back to all these comments and stuff like that, which kind of threw me for a loop. Let's just say that. I'm just going to start off by saying I still think Capcom is taking a huge risk with this game.
I don't disagree with you there. I do think that making Wilds was a huge risk, especially with the way people had response to the betas. Like, some people had responses to the betas that were just like this guy, where they were not the greatest of responses to the betas because of the performance issues and stuff like that. But I think other than that, people had nothing but praises for the game. But I do think that they did take a huge risk in just making a new game rather than falling back on something that worked before. I do think that they were taking a big risk, but I think they would have been taking a big risk going the other way too. I think falling back and being like, oh well, we're going to come back to World and Iceborne now because Rise didn't do as well or whatever. I think they would have been making a huge risk there too.
And not expanding on Monster Hunter World. That's just my opinion, and I stand by that. Okay, I genuinely think they could have done another DLC.
They absolutely could have. Yep, they absolutely could have. And it would have made a lot of people happy. Sure, absolutely. I personally would have probably would have had another DLC of World than Rise, but again, I didn't play Rise, so I don't have a strong opinion either here or there about whether or not Rise was a good game or a bad game. Just from what I saw of Rise, it just didn't look like the type of Monster Hunter game I wanted to play.
Could have expanded more. But I also get why you guys might be excited for a new game, a new installment, new mechanics. I might have been too harsh in how I said things. I did watch it back.
You don't need the sad music, man. the sad music is too much.
Just before, I was very upset. So the biggest one I saw was about the clutch claw and how that was being taken out, and you guys actually preferred that compared to it having it like you did in World.
Yeah, I do prefer it. Absolutely. Like I said, there's some things that I kind of miss about it, but at the same time, I'm actually really preferring the newer mechanics over this one.
That surprised me too. And I think the truth of the matter is that I'm not a long-time Monster Hunter fan. I'm a Monster Hunter World fan. You know, that's the only game that I
Same. I have not played any other games other than Monster Hunter World and a little bit of Iceborne and now Wilds. Those are the only Monster Hunter games I've played.
have ever played in the Monster Hunter series. So I guess coming into Monster Hunter World and then going to Monster Hunter Wilds, maybe I didn't see that natural progression through the series. I'm starting to think. Okay, so the biggest one I would say is the Clutch Claw. So let's start there. So my main issue with Wilds is that it felt like, to me, it took away some of that freedom and aggression that made me fall in love with World. Okay, aggression. I mean,
I can kind of see that a little bit. I can see why you would think that it's taking away from the aggression, taking away the Clutch Claw.
Aggressive fighter in video games. And the Clutch Claw was a big part of that for me. The biggest question I have is Capcom just getting rid of it because the community is saying that it's bad? And if so, are they replacing it with anything? And one thing that...
They did. They replaced it. It's not a direct comparison, but the wound system is a replacement for the Clutch Claw. And I mean, like I said, the Clutch Claw isn't completely entirely replaced. The Slinger still works to grab onto wedge beetles and some environmental things to be able to mount monsters. So the Clutch Claw isn't entirely gone. It's just that the element of being able to clutch onto a monster is gone.
That surprised me personally was that apparently most of the community is genuinely happy that it's gone.
It did make fights a little too easy in World. Once you got really good at the Clutch Claw, fights were just way too easy. You could just clutch onto monsters and beat the crap out of them, and it made fights super simple to do because of the Clutch Claw. Now, granted, I'm sure someone could say the same thing about the wound system, is that it can make, like the focus mode system and wounds, that it makes some fights somewhat trivial. And I'm sure that a case could be made for that. So do I think the wound system is a perfect system? No, I don't. I don't think they're ever going to have a perfect system on this, but I do think that it's nice to change up these mechanics and have something different for your players to master rather than just throwing the same thing at them over and over again and hoping that they'll, keep coming back for the same kind of content, just throwing a different monster at you.
I had no clue. I'm not in touch with the community, so that's fair enough. I still think it added a level of aggression that I enjoyed as a player, but I can understand why some players can probably think that it's repetitive or it's like a fight skipper,
And yeah, it was very repetitive. It was very repetitive because all you had to do, and I was guilty of this too. I just kept using the Clutch Claw because it was easy. It was something that I could easily do to feel like I was contributing to the fight.
So I can see both sides here. Now the second one was focus mode. I saw a lot of people saying focus mode does make you feel like Levi from Attack on Titan, and it does feel rewarding. And look, I get it. Watching back, I can see how focus mode has that satisfying flow to reward players. But look, for me personally, it just still feels like the AI is doing too much for the player.
I can agree somewhat with that. Like it is a little. It's like a catch-22 with it, where there's good because, yes, it does have a rewarding flow. It does feel good to use the wound system while you're using it, but it can be also pointed out that the AI definitely does some of that work for you because you hit a wound, and when you hit a wound in focus mode, it instantly stuns the whatever monster you're fighting. It doesn't matter how big or small that monster is. If it has a wound and you hit it in focus mode, they're instantly stunned for the rest of the animation for you to destroy that wound. So yeah, I can definitely see that being the case.
Those cool combos, I just spat. Those cool combos that you get stuck in an animation into, I want to do that. I want to do those.
I can I can definitely agree with that. That like doing those combos would probably feel better if you're the one pulling them off rather than it being an animation in the game. I can agree with that.
Sick moves. All I have to do is just hold the shift mode, my focus mode, hold shift, click a button, and then watch the animation go on. You know, I want to do something. I don't want the AI to do all those cool moves for me. I seriously love the idea of focus mode. I do. I just wish that they would maybe look more into it to the point where it's not just about clicking one button and then letting an animation play out. I want it to be more skill-based.
I mean, I would argue, like I argued before, that focus mode is a bit more skill-based than Clutch Claw. But yeah, the part of it where you actually hit the wound, when you actually hit the wound and the animation plays out, like that's just as skillful as doing the Clutch Claw, which is not very much. All the skill happens from actually being able to hit the wound or strategically hitting the wound when you need to. So yeah, I can see where you'd be coming from on that.
Big concern was Destiny 2 and me comparing that to Monster Hunter World or the Monster Hunter series in general. Fuck no. Okay. Never in my life would you catch me comparing that to Monster Hunter.
But you did. You compared Destiny 2 and it coming out with more DLCs and expansions and stuff to how they could have handled Monster Hunter World. So while you may not have directly compared Destiny 2 to Monster Hunter in the sense of it being a game, like gameplay wise and things like that, you did fully compare it to it on the marketing side at the very least.
Monster Hunter's way, it's in a different league, okay? I was merely just making an example as Destiny 2 is a video game that came out in 2017. And they've brought out 5 DLCs in that time.
And each progressive DLC has, for the most part, been less successful than the game first launching. I think they've had a couple of big spikes that for a couple of those expansions, but from what I know of Destiny 2, a couple of those expansions were quite small and disappointing for people. That and Destiny 2 in general seems to be disappointing to players anymore.
And how successful have they been? Pretty damn successful. So I was just stating a fact that a game like Destiny 2 is bringing out DLCs. I'm pretty sure they brought one out in 2023, 2 years ago, whatever it was. And players are still jumping on it. And I was just making a point that, you know, maybe...
Much less than previous, I think. But yeah, players are still playing the game, for sure. It's a live service game. It's still going. So they have that going for them.
Maybe Monster Hunter World should have done that. They shouldn't have just done one DLC. Even though there was someone who was saying Iceborne is pretty much 3 DLCs in one, and I totally get that. Trust me.
Yeah, it kind of is. With the amount of content that they added, it is kind of like 3 DLCs in one, which is exactly why they made it in an expansion instead of piecemealing it out in DLC.
I do. I just feel like they could have done another one. But hey, if you disagree with that, you disagree with that. You know, that's fine.
No, I definitely agree that they could have done another world. And like I said before, I do think I would fall into that camp of I would have rather had another world DLC rather than the new game of Rise. I can agree there.
Now, I think I'll be real for a second, okay? Most of my frustration was not rage bait. As much as you might think that it is, I genuinely did not mean it for it to come out that way. I was just venting. I have no one to vent to. I have no one to vent to. So I decided to do it on camera, upload the video. I did not think that the majority of the Monster Hunter community felt indifferent about the way that I felt.
You may not have intended it to be rage bait, but your title says otherwise. When you title your video something along the lines of they're ruining the franchise with Wilds, you're inciting the community of those people, even people like me who are much more akin to someone like you, where my only real experience with Monster Hunter before Wilds was World and Iceborne. So I like, I'm one of the people that should be agreeing with you on some of these things if it was purely based on that, but I disagree with you quite a lot because of not just because of the way you said things, but because of the things you were saying. Like, because like just making more and more DLCs for World wouldn't have been a good solution, especially with the kinds of changes that they made with Wilds. Wilds is a far better game in my opinion than World ever was. Does it have less content in it than World plus Iceborne? Sure. Are they going to make an expansion for it? Maybe. They might. I don't know if that's in their plan or not, but I kind of hope that it is. I know that we still have Master Mode left to go, so that'll come out at some point.
And maybe this is just what happens when you have someone who joins the Monster Hunter world, no pun intended, playing Monster Hunter World.
No, it's not. It's not. I can say that from my own experience that it's not what happens. What happens is I think it will depend on the person, absolutely, but I can look at games and look at them from a point of view that isn't just, okay, I only want this game forever. Granted, I have that kind of look at a very specific game of one that I'd absolutely love to have remade or remastered for like today's graphics and stuff, and that being Castlevania Symphony of the Night. It was my favorite Castlevania game, and pretty much every Castlevania game that I've played after that, which hasn't been a lot of them, but pretty much every Castlevania game after that has been a disappointment. Even the newer game that came out from the creator of Castlevania, which I'm blanking on the name of it off the top of my head, but Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, that's the one. Even it didn't like fully live up to my expectations of a game, but it did bring back that nostalgia of playing Castlevania Symphony of the Night. So in that way, I can somewhat agree with you on that, being like, yes, I fell in love with this game and I just want more of it. But wanting more of the game doesn't mean that I don't want them to innovate, because even Bloodstained had its innovations and stuff. And I do love that game. But the nostalgia of Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and like, just because like just first going to the second half of the game, because the first half of the game, like when you first beat the game, like you first get all the way through the castle, you're like, yeah, I've finally beaten the game, only to realize that there is a whole second area that is the upside down castle. The first time I saw that, I was blown away. And it's just a moment in my gaming, I guess, career that is just absolutely plastered in my mind. I'm sure I'll be 85 years old sitting on a porch somewhere not being able to remember my own name and still remember that moment from Castlevania.
For the first game, I didn't see that natural progression from the very first game, which was, I believe, in PlayStation. I fell in love with Monster Hunter World because of what it was and not what I knew, if that makes sense. And most of that...
Yeah, that does make sense. It's the same reason why I fell in love with it. It was the first Monster Hunter game that actually had any appeal to me whatsoever. None of the previous Monster Hunter games, when I saw them, none of them, I just didn't get it. I didn't get what people liked about playing a game just about killing big behemoth monster things. I just didn't get it. I do think what helped me get into it was actually a series that has some similarities but is very different from Monster Hunter, and that would be the Souls series games, the Soulsborne series games. Playing those games actually, I think, kind of primed me for World, and then World came out and I fell in love with it, and now Wilds is out and I'm absolutely in love with that.
That frustration that came into that video was because I was expecting Monster Hunter World 2. And
it kind of is. It kind of is. Wilds is kind of Monster Hunter World 2, just without the clutch claw bits that you are missing.
Wilds is not that. The UI threw me off. The user interface...
There is some differences in the UI that were a little odd for me to get a handle of. Not being able to just press left or right on the D-pad to go through my little item belt on the lower right was a little weird. Having to press another button to be able to access that menu was a little weird to get used to, but now that I'm used to it, it's not bad. Is it what I really preferred? No, but It's not bad.
was just completely different than what I expected. My keybinds were different. I mean, my switchblade, all my keybinds were completely thrown in a mumble jumble. And I think
I guess I didn't really have as much of a problem with this because I play on controller. So I didn't really have as much of an issue with keybinds because pretty much all the buttons that were what they were in World, for the most part, were the same in Wilds on controller.
truth is, I just wasn't patient enough to learn a new game, new mechanics. And when you go into a game frustrated, it's easy to focus. No pun intended.
That pun was absolutely intended. He lies about that. That was absolutely intended.
On what you don't like instead of what's actually good. So I completely understand where you guys are coming from. I understand why you think it's rage bait. I understand your negative comments. Just know that it was not intentional. I genuinely mean that.
You might genuinely mean that now, I'm sure, but making the title the way you did, you absolutely rage baited the click. Absolutely. You absolutely did that because it's the only reason why I clicked on your video, because I was like, what the hell is this guy saying? I need to know what this guy's saying, why this game is ruining the franchise. So it's the only reason why I clicked on it. Whether it was intended or not, that's what came out of it.
And I'm sorry that you feel that way. I just needed to vent. I didn't know who to vent to. And I'm still going to stand on this hill and say that
I do think that like venting to your friends may have been a better plan if you didn't want the backlash that you got on the internet, because you vented to the internet, and anything you put on the internet, it's there forever. Like when I post this, it's going to be on my channel, and whether I remove it later or not, if someone downloads it or clips it or whatever, those clips are going to be there forever. So even my reactions to you are going to be on the internet forever. So it's that unless the internet goes down tomorrow forever, these moments will be always there. So that's the risk you take when you're venting to the internet.
everything that I said in the video, I completely still agree with. So where do I stand now? I still think some of my points hold up. Okay, I don't think focus mode is perfect.
I agree. It's not perfect.
It's not skill-based enough.
I can agree with that. It's not skill-based enough. It is still, I still would argue that it's more skill-based than Clutch Claw, but only by like a small fraction. It's not a super big skill jump from Clutch Claw to focus mode.
For me personally, I think they need to make it more rewarding. You need to make the player feel more rewarded rather than just hitting a spot that is a very large hitbox, by the way. And
it's not a large hitbox, but I do think that it is a little too large. I do think that they could shrink that hitbox, and that would probably help me feel more rewarded because I'm able to actually be like, yeah, I hit that box. That's somewhat hard to hit. But yeah, it is somewhat easy to hit the wounds, especially after you get the hang of actually like turning and aiming. Even on controller, it's not hard to whip around and hit those wounds pretty easily.
And I miss the aggression with such things like the clutch claw.
Yeah, but there's other aggression in the game. The other aggression in the game, like there's a lot of aggression with other weapons. I do kind of miss my because like I said, I use the hunting horn. I do kind of miss my spinny attack with the hunting horn, and I'm hoping that that is one thing that they had that Iceborne added to World that I hope they bring back to the hunting horn at some point, giving it that move again, because that move was super fun to use. Whether it's cheesy or not, whether I have the wrong opinion on this, maybe I do, I don't know, but that is something that I personally would like to have back, is that whole little spinny move, because it felt somewhat skill-based because you had to actually, like, you had to perform an attack and then actually hit the button at the right time to initiate that whole spinning attack. So while it's not super skill based, sure, it's really easy to do once you get the hang of it. But I mean, it's just something that I would like to have back personally.
I think being planted on 2 feet, working around the monster, not being like agile enough.
I mean, if you want agile, there's weapons for that, and there's other solutions for that. So even for weapons that aren't as agile as, say, like the dual blades or the bow or the insect glaive or like sword and shield or the switch axe, like there's a lot of agile weapons that can get you onto the monster. I mean, there are other things that you can use, like the wedge beetles in the environment. Can you use those everywhere? No, but that's why the sacred exists. You get up somewhere high with the sacred and land on a monster. You can still mount them and still do massive damage to them by mounting the monster. So it's just aggression in another way. It's just mechanics that you have to master in a different mechanics than previous games that you have to master to be able to be good at it.
And sticking at its feet, you know, it's a different.
You don't have to stick at its feet. Like I said, there's other weapons and other mechanics to use to be able to get up and around the monster, and you're not just stuck to the monster's feet the whole time in Wilds. If you're stuck to the monster's feet the whole time in Wilds, it's because you're not engaging with the other mechanics that allow you to move around more.
Different type of pacing of fights.
The different pacing in fights is actually really great because monsters run away less, in my opinion. They seem to like run off to other locations. A good majority of the time they've run off less, or they don't run as far as they did in World. So I'm doing a lot less chasing monsters down because they're running away than I was before. There's also a lot of different ways to stop them from running away in the middle of their run. So like the different pacing, I think, is actually a good thing.
For me personally. Seriously though, the open world looks actually amazing. I'm actually kind of annoyed that I didn't get a chance to explore a bit more because I was so frustrated with the game. And I think
the open world is fantastic. After having the full release and having experienced everything that there is in low rank at the very least, I don't know if there's another area in high rank that I haven't gone to or something. There might be. I don't know. I haven't spoiled myself on anything like that. Even if there's not another world, just fully exploring these areas in all of their different changing seasons, it's wonderful. And I definitely, if this guy hasn't bought the game, if he didn't buy the game at launch, I do highly recommend playing it at the very least. Like even if you don't want to buy the game first, like if you have a friend that has the game, even if it's on console, like on PlayStation 5 or something like that, or another friend that plays the game on PC, that you can go over to their house or whatever and play it to try it out. Or if they like lend you their Steam account to use at your place to be able to install it and play it for a while, I highly recommend doing that because it is a fantastic game. And I do think that any Monster Hunter fan that doesn't have this game is missing out on a fantastic Monster Hunter game.
I think there's going to be one thing that I want to tell most of you, which are probably going to surprise you, is thank you. And you might be like, why are you thanking me? I'm literally cussing you out. I'm literally telling you to kill yourself. The more that
Well, I'm not going to tell you to kill yourself. Jesus. Did people actually tell him that? That's crazy. No. That's bad. This guy is entirely entitled to his opinion. He's not thanking me at all. I'm late to this party. So thanking me is not going to do anything. But, like, nobody should have told you to kill yourself, dude. Like, that's going way too far. That's just crazy.
I hear from you guys as other players, and especially, like, long-time players, the more I realize that this isn't a step backwards per se. It's just a step in a different direction. Thank you.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. You said it. You said it right there. It's not a step back. It's just a step in a different direction. Yeah.
For that, you know, you opened my eyes. As you can tell, I'm no longer angry. I'm definitely not going to take back what I said. I still have a lot to figure out.
I don't think you should take back what you said. I really don't. I do think, like, while I may disagree with you and may have, in my opinion, good points on why what you said is not necessarily correct. Like it may be good for some people and bad for a majority of people. Like going back and doing more with World now would have been just as much of a risk as making Wilds, I think. But like, I think you're perfectly entitled to that opinion. And like I said, I would have enjoyed another expansion to World rather than having Rise, because Rise, like I said, it didn't look like something I wanted to play. It still doesn't look like something I want to play. And now that I have Wilds, I definitely don't feel like going back and playing it.
About Monster Hunter Wilds, and I'm sure that like my opinion will evolve as I actually play the game. So,
oh, he's gonna get the game! Woo! Woo! He's gonna get the game!
I will be playing the game, and I will not.
Woo! Yeah! Excitement. I hope you love it. I really do. I hope you fall in love with Wilds as much as it seems like the rest of the community has.
Be thinking about Monster Hunter World. I'm going to go in there with a fresh head. I want to relearn everything. You know, I did it with Monster Hunter World and I fell in love with the game. If I can do it with that game, I can do it with this game. Again,
yes, you absolutely can. You absolutely can.
This was not for views or subscribers, okay? Who in their right mind would do that kind of a rant video?
I mean, lots of people. I mean, you're talking about reaction channels in general. I mean, I'm doing a react right now, and I've never really done... I mean, I might have done something like this before. I can't remember. It's been years since I posted on my channel. So, I may have done something like this previously, but I just don't remember. But I mean, it is what people do. People do this for views, for subs, for whatever they're doing. I'm doing it like, because you can react to something without actually putting it online. Like I could do this and never post it, and I would still feel like I got my words heard, even if they're only heard by me, you know? So, I mean, that whether you did it for that purpose or not, like whether you were just posting it because, I feel like I'm posting it, kind of, that's why I'm doing this. It's like, I just feel like doing it. It's not really like, I hope this blows up and becomes a viral video. I'm just, but well, like if that was to happen, it would just, all that would really do is, you know, encourage me to make more videos.
4 views and subscribers. I was literally just venting. I was expecting to lose subscribers, which did happen. Look,
that's unsurprising. That is unsurprising. Having those hot takes on Wilds, that is not surprising that you lost subscribers for that.
I get it. We all have differing opinions. It's a gaming community. This is what makes games great. Passion.
Agreed. Passion is definitely something that video games need to thrive, both from the developers of those games and from the players who play them.
If you're not passionate about a game, why are we even talking about it? I've said my...
Yeah. I agree. No reason to talk about it if you're not actually passionate about what's going on with it. Yeah.
My piece, and now it's your turn. Do you think Wilds will genuinely live up to the hype and maybe even surpass World? Or do you think...
It already has. It already has. It absolutely already has. Like, yeah, there are definitely complaints about the game. The biggest complaint, I think, being like the performance issues, and then of course, like I said, people memeing on Nada and not liking Nada as a character, I guess. But at least they're not memeing on the handler this time, and that was definitely happening with World. I'm definitely in that camp of I really didn't like the handler in World. I thought she was very annoying. So.
Think that they are 2 separate games in their own right, and there is no comparing.
You can definitely compare them. You can definitely compare them. They are 2 separate games, but you can definitely compare them. And I do think that there is arguments to be said about some things in World that like the Clutch Claw that some people may really like, and there are definitely things about Wilds that some people are definitely going to be like, this is way better than World. I think the biggest thing being the world of Wilds is because of the fact that it's open world. Like you can go anywhere in the world just by running there. You don't have to fast travel anywhere if you don't want to. You can walk from place to place with practically no loading screens. I mean, there's like pseudo loading screens, I guess. Like I'm sure there's some trickery happening when you go from the path that you leave one area to when you enter the next. I'm sure there's some kind of behind the scenes loading mechanics going on there. But it's not hidden behind a loading screen. You're still immersed in the game while it's happening. So
I don't know, maybe you can convince me. I'd love to go into Wilds with a fresh start, fresh head, learn everything again. And I think I will do that if I can save enough money. So for the person who told me to go kill myself, I would...
fuck that guy or girl, whoever they are. Fuck them. They're a terrible person. Anyone who says stuff like that on the internet is a terrible person. And I can say this knowing that I may have in the past said something along the same lines to people. And even I, at that time, would have been a very terrible person to do something like that to someone else. It's not right. It's not good for anyone. You're not actually helping in any kind of argument. You're not convincing anyone of anything. The only thing that you're convincing anyone of is that you are an ass and a terrible person.
Genuinely like to say to you, you might have a bit too much passion for the game and for the series as a whole. Maybe just think twice about sending such messages online, okay?
Or a third time, or a fourth time. And then just don't send messages like that and instead give constructive criticism on their opinions rather than telling them to go kill themselves. I think that would be more productive for everyone than telling someone to commit seppuku.
Lucky for me, I've been bullied for most of my life, so seeing such comments on... and
I don't think that's lucky, dude. I've been bullied for most of my life too. For most of my life growing up anyway, when I was in school and stuff. I've been bullied outside of school too. It's just different as an adult. But yeah, I might be able to see your point on this. Like, you have thick skin, you can take it. But at the same time, you shouldn't have to have those comments, man. I am so sorry that your video even had somebody like that on there. It's not right. You shouldn't have somebody telling you to kill yourself simply because you have a differing opinion on a video game. I can think that you're wrong, and we can have, granted, this is more of a one-way conversation, but if we ever wanted to have a conversation about this face-to-face, I would absolutely love it, and I would absolutely not tell you to kill yourself. That is just the dumbest thing I think anybody could ever do online, other than, you know, the whole act of actually killing someone. I think making comments like that are just stupid. It's dumb. You're a child. You're acting like a child because you're telling someone to kill themselves because they have an opinion you don't like. Now, granted, yeah, free speech, whatever, you can say whatever you want, and sure, you have every right to say that to them, I guess. At the same time, it doesn't make you a better person because you're telling someone else to kill themselves because they have a differing opinion of you on a video game.
words on the screen doesn't really affect me. Okay, I've learned to be mature about that type of stuff. That's all I wanted to say. I didn't mean for it to come off as rage bait, but I think it did come off as rage bait, if that makes sense. I didn't mean for it like that, okay? Genuinely. So
all right, so this was Kooda. I hope I'm saying that right, Kooda. And I hope that anybody that does see my video, I hope you guys go and give this guy a subscribe or a follow. In fact, I'm gonna subscribe to him right now. I want to see, because like, whether he has a differing opinion on things than other people in the Monster Hunter community or just other people online, like, he doesn't deserve that kind of hate. He didn't deserve that kind of hate from any kind of video that he might have made. Like, none of that matters. Like, he had a differing opinion. You could definitely, I'm sure it definitely fueled engagement to have people of differing opinions in the comments. And I'm absolutely certain that that's a good thing to have differing opinions in the comments. I don't disagree with that, but I do disagree with that calls to violence or actually saying to someone to kill themselves. Like, bro, you need to calm down. You need to settle down and like figure out what's wrong with your own life before you start telling people who have opinions on video games to kill themselves. Honestly, like, you can have differing opinions on basically anything and not come to those conclusions. So basically that's it. I think this was good. I didn't plan on reacting to 2 videos at once, but so this is probably going to be pretty long because I think I've been sitting here for like an hour or more. I have no idea how long my recording is. But hey, I hope anybody who does see this enjoys it. And I guess I'll be back with another video later on. Bye.